Hello everybody, I'm the Blind Scout and welcome to the channel. So I want to talk briefly about the concept of a remaster for Empire Total War. Recently the Rome Total War remaster came out, and that got me to thinking it would be fun to kind of think about, well, what would I want if they were to remaster Empire Total War? And I've come up with a few ideas, and I'm going to share it with you. I kind of might dub this a little bit more of a reforge instead of a remaster, because it's several differences, but it's just a fun little mental exercise to do. So anyway, let's get on with it. The first thing is unit size. I would love to see bigger units in Empire Total War. Like, I think 200 unit caps. I think the original unit cap is around 100. Depending on maybe 120 or 100, I can't remember exactly where it is off the top of my head now, but anyway, you know, more units, more men in each unit is what I mean, and then maybe larger army stacks. So I think that would be a cool little feature. Another thing would be like ammo limits for artillery, like, because they have infinite ammo right now. And that always seems kind of silly to me, because it's like, okay, so you kind of simulate these longer battles, running battles in less time with the rest of the game. But you can just fire away with artillery like endlessly. I still think they should have a decent amount of ammo. I think like 20 minutes of ammo would probably be a good kind of range. And maybe even having different ammo counts for the different types of ammo you use, so you only have so much grape shot or so much, you know, solid shot. And you know, if you have or a canister, I don't know, I said grape shot, didn't I? I meant canister. But anyway, yeah, you'd have different ammo counts for the different ammo. I think that would be a cool feature. Another cool feature I think would be nice to see is ammo carts, like carts that actually take up a slot that you can move around to replenish unit ammo. So you kind of add this kind of like battlefield logistical system. Of course, it'd be slower and it would take time to resupply a unit, but you know, that way you can, like, if you wanted to have one of those with your artillery, you can actually fire for longer. I don't know, maybe it doubles the amount of ammunition that the unit has, because it can be resupplied, like, maybe, I don't know, once or something. But I just think it would be kind of a cool little feature that you see kind of like in the Ultimate General franchise. And that would be kind of a cool little feature to see inside of Empire. Another feature I'd love to see is Napoleon and Empire kind of merged into one game, with all the maps and units and everything else all across the board. There's other things that I kind of want to see with that, but it would be a cool thing to see them both brought together. I think it would make it a lot more of an interesting sort of title for it would give you a reason to actually pick it up, because you'd have two games in one game basically. The other thing is like Shogun 2 type shooting mechanics, where your units are not shooting each other in the back. You know, they actually won't shoot each other, because that becomes it. Like, as a player, you can kind of manage it, but I can't tell you how many times I've ended up winning battles rather substantially, not because of anything I did, but just because the enemy lined their troops up and then proceeded to execute their own troops, basically. And yeah, that's a feature that I think is very, very needed in this, especially with the way the AI is in the game. It would be cool to see, like, maybe some other type of mechanics as well, but, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what else, but yeah. Anyway, one other thing I would love to see is expanding the Revolutionary War to be a little bit more dynamic. I mean, I think it's pretty good with regards to the overall campaign, but I would love to see you be able to play as the British, for instance. and actually fight the Revolutionary War as the British and try to beat them, which should be doable pretty well. But you know, just as another way of playing. Another thing that I would love to see, because I do this, I play Empire Darth mod a lot, and one thing I love to do is play as the minor factions, even though they don't have any resources or anything out. You know, not the same amount of resources, not the same amount of units or anything else. They tend to be very limited. But that's one of the reasons why I enjoy playing as some of the minor factions, is because of those limitations. And I would love to see that become a part of the game itself, is being able to play these minor factions. Not just in, like, even on the campaign map, although that's mostly what I'm focusing on, but it could also be fun to do some of that in, like, even like the online battles or custom battles, or, you know, stuff like that. Another feature I'd love to see is line of sight spotting. Kind of like you could enable this in Shogun 2, but I'm thinking probably more like how it was implemented in Rome 2. I love the line of sight spotting, and also like maybe like a range spotting system for like if it's foggy, so you can only see so far away from your unit. You know, just to add a little bit more dynamic gameplay. It would really change up how the game is played. I'd also like to see the Empire AI updated to at least Napoleon. It would be cool to see more updates than that, but Napoleon's AI naturally runs a lot better than Empire's AI, and it would be nice to see it at least updated to that, if not better. But you know, the AI is always awkward in Total War games, so you know. Of course, also visual effects. It would be cool to see updated visual effects, as well as, you know, graphical, obviously texture updates for the terrain and everything else, and for the units too. Honestly, the units don't look horrible. Well, I mean, they don't look great, but they could look better. But it would be cool to see some visual upgrades as well. Obviously, if it's a remastered, then it would need visual upgrades. But in particular, the effects would be my biggest thing. Although the effects can be quite nice in Napoleon in particular. But it would be cool to see them upgraded. Now, one other thing I was going to say is with Napoleon and Empire, if you put them together, it would be cool to see drop-in battles across both of the games, so that you can be playing one and then drop into like you'd be playing Napoleon and then drop into a battle being played in Empire, and basically just bring those together. I think that would be a very cool feature, a very, very cool feature. And obviously, I would also love to see co-op and versus campaigns, multiplayer campaigns in both games. That would also be something I would love to see. One other thing that I think would be really cool, even though this is just more or less like something I'd just like to see, because things are generally there, you'd have to create the map, but see a War of 1812 campaign, that would be cool, where you can play as either, you know, the Americans or the British in there as well. And I'm mostly just because I think that would be fun, and the units are already there. So that's just something I would like to see. I would also like to see Streamline Units to work between both Napoleon and Empire, so that they could work together a little bit better and just kind of like streamline them a little bit more. I think Empire's units would probably need to be streamlined a little bit more to work with Napoleon. Not necessarily completely, because a lot of the period is pre-Napoleon, so you'd have units that, you know, are pre-Napoleonic warfare. But it would still be cool to see them kind of get somewhat more streamlined. Although there's a lot of features I really love in Empire that are not in Napoleon, and so, yeah. Anyway. Another feature that I would love to see is combined land and naval battles. If you ever played Ultimate Admiral, you get to have these kind of combined land and naval battles, and they're really, really cool. And it's not like it's alien to Total War series. Obviously, you have them since Rome 2. You have some land and naval battles combined, land and naval battles. So I think that would be cool to see come into like the Empire type gameplay. One other thing I would love to see is Shogun 2 type map maker, so that people can just make more maps for this, and you can get a lot more variety. I think that would be a really, really cool feature, and I would love to see that. And obviously with that, I would love to see workshop support, Steam workshop support. I think that would be very, very nice, and also would make modding a lot easier. Because I think modding the modding community is great for the Total War series, and I'd just love to see more support for them. All right, I'm going to shift over to a kind of multiplayer style campaign idea that because I really love the multiplayer campaign, Avatar campaign, multiplayer campaign in Shogun 2. And I would love to see something like that come into, Empire type warfare. And I have a few ideas. You have, instead of having, how in Shogun 2 you have it all happening on the map of Japan, you'd have it on the map of Empire Total War. And you'd have an immense amount of regions to capture, and it would be a little bit different. But I'll get into explaining that here in a second. Okay, one of the features I'd like is you have, in this particular game mode, is you'd have, you can make these veteran units in Shogun 2, and I don't think that system would really work, but one system I think would be really cool is if you could have these kind of mercenary units, which would serve as your veteran units that you can actually use on any faction you choose to play with, because you just choose, because when you go to invade to attack a territory or defend it, you go to attack a territory, you'd choose your faction and you'd set up your faction, but you'd have 4 or 5 slots available for kind of basically your elite units, but they'd be mercenary units, and they could be from any faction that you could just pull in from anywhere. Now, obviously these units you'd have to they'd be unavailable if you use them in one, then they'd be unavailable in the next one, or maybe in Shogun 2 they'd just be depleted and you'd have to resupply them. I think that would be a cool feature. Now with that, I do think that mercenary units could not be unique units. You couldn't have the USS Constitution, for instance, as a unique unit. I forgot to mention that you'd also have a naval set of unique mercenary units, and then land you'd have those separate, of course. But I think it would be, you wouldn't want the Coldstream Guard as a mercenary unit. I think that would be unfair. I think special elite units and unique units would not be able to be turned into mercenaries for obvious reasons. They'd be just overpowered. Now, the generals that you'd have, of course, your general would, it would change from faction to faction, so it would match up with the faction that you're in, but what would change would be your general's rating. The more territory your general had underneath his belt, the more stars you'd have. And basically, the better your general would be. The better morale he'd be able to give his men, or such and such. And I think that would be kind of the reason why you'd want to capture as much territory as not, because you need to have a better and better general. And it would also show as this is how good this person playing has, or how long this person's been playing to get so far along. Their general so far along, and how many stars they have or something. So that would be kind of the point of capturing territories. Here I'd also like to see the option to play as any faction in any of these battles, including minor factions. So if you want to play as some random faction, then you can, And I think that would also change things up a lot as you're playing. And I think that would just make it a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more interesting because you never know who you're going to fight because there's a lot of factions. One other thing I think would be cool is to have like a 10% chance of a siege battle, because that way you never know when you're going to end up in the siege battle. And it may or may not be something you want, but you're going to have to deal with it anyway. And I believe that there'll have to be a reward or especially if you quit, you'd have to be like penalized maybe by having that battle counted as a loss. And I'll get a little bit more into how the loss and win system works. Now, earlier I said that your general would change with where you went to faction to faction. But I do think that maybe having some customization in there for the different general and bodyguard could be cool. Maybe your general changes every time. Or not your general. Maybe your bodyguard might change to the faction appropriate, but maybe your general looks however you want him to look. That could be cool. So anyway, I'm not saying there shouldn't be customization there. I'm just saying it's. I don't know how you'd have to figure out a good way of implementing that. Now you would use all maps from the Empire and Napoleonic and Napoleon Total War games for this game mode, and it would be randomized. You wouldn't know where you were going to end up. And that includes the historical battles, even the unbalanced one. As a matter of fact, that would be kind of a feature that you might end up on an unbalanced map. And that's one of the reasons why it would be so hard to progress in the campaign, because you might be doing really, really well, but then you just might end up on a really bad map end up in a really bad situation because some of those maps, like if you're like attacking someone and you're on Waterloo and you're not the one behind on the ridge, then you might have a hard time. And there's some others that you could really have a hard time trying to beat your opponent just because of the map. And again, I think that's kind of a feature, really, because it forces you to have to deal with that or lose, and most likely lose. So, yeah. Now, talking about that, the whole system would basically revolve over when you win, you would when you win a battle, you would gain a region. But if you lose a battle, you lose a region. You lose one of the regions because you'd select which region you want to fight over, and then if you lose, then one of the regions next to that, because it would have to be connected to one of your regions, those regions next to it, you'd lose. So it would, you'd actually have some more consequences for losing. Now, I'm going to say that a lot of people are probably going to back out of the army building screen or the load screen of things, and I think that there should be a penalty where if you do that, for every 2 times you do that, you lose a region, just to try to keep people from doing that so much. You have to, yeah, you can do this, but it's, you're going to have to deal with a penalty for doing so. So I think that would be a cool kind of feature. Again, that's pretty much my current thoughts on kind of that kind of multiplayer campaign concept, but I just think it would be a cool thing to see. Not saying that's going to happen, but it would be kind of cool to see a Empire, Napoleon style Avatar campaign system. Another multiplayer game mode that I think would be kind of cool would be see like a tactical multiplayer mode, where it's basically like the arena kind of mode, only it's like 6 versus 6, where everybody has 3 armies each, and it would just be very, very small, more of a tactical kind of. Well, I guess it's all kind of tactical, but you know what I mean. It would be smaller. You wouldn't have so many units to do. It would just have a very different feel to it. I think that could possibly be very cool as well. And yeah, I just think that would be kind of a cool little mode to see in there as well. I'm throwing that in at the end. So anyway, Those are my thoughts. I mean, will this ever happen? I don't think so. It would be cool to see in like an Empire 2 as well, but I'm kind of weary of anything that Total War's been doing lately because I haven't really been enjoying their recent games. But hopefully one day they will make an Empire 2 and it'll be good, I hope. If they were to do this, that would be awesome. But again, I'm not gonna hold my breath. But you know, it would be cool. Anyway, that's my thoughts, and it was just kind of a fun little exercise to do. And I hope you enjoyed this. If you didn't, that's fine. Again, I just did this for fun. So thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.